Yeah, sir. Michael Ruiz from Fox Digital. Sheriff, you said you've identified no suspects. Have you ruled out anyone she was with on Saturday night?
You know, we've talked to so many. I'm sure that my investigators have feelings about this one's clear or this one isn't. But no, I wouldn't say anybody's ruled out yet, because what if I rule you out and then later I learn something else? No.
So my follow-up, you mentioned that you don't know where the recording of a forced entry came from. Do we know how whoever did this got into her house?
That I would not discuss with you anyway.
Fox News, Paul Morrow.
Question for Agent Edwards, if I may. Agent Edwards, will the Bureau be submitting the DNA for investigative genealogical investigation relative to maybe hitting a relative, somebody, if you will?
I would say the DNA aspect of this case is being handled by the Pima County Sheriff's Department right now. However, should we get to that point, yes, that would be an option for the FBI to assist.
And a quick follow-up, does the ransom note that you're working establish any communication protocols in it?
If someone has Nancy and is demanding the ransom, that there is communication with the family. We talked about there has been no proof of life, and there was no other demands within that letter. So they're still waiting for communication.
Darren Porcher and former FBI Special Agent Nicole Parker. All right, Nicole, let's go to you, because I'm sure that the FBI is looking into this. These reports of a ransom note that were emailed to KOLD, which is a CBS affiliate there in Tucson, and to TMZ in California, which is a Fox property. What have you heard about the veracity of these ransom notes, and what do you believe the federal investigators would be looking into regarding this?
Those ransom notes are extremely important, the emails. And in fact, the way that they were transmitted via email, that is very indicative of certain things that they intended to do. But that does give law enforcement another layer of investigative tools, because they can go in and dissect the technical metadata behind the emails. And I know that they're working on doing that right now. In addition to that, within the actual ransom note, there is the content, and the behavioral analysis unit from the FBI, they are the best. And they go in and they do a full statement analysis, and they determine, based on the wording and the verbiage that was used, they determine how it's best to reply to it. And so I have no doubt that they were heavily involved. That's something that we often do in our investigations. We'll take information, we'll go to BAU, and they'll say, look, this is the best way to do it. This is the best way to word it. So I have a very strong feeling that the Guthrie family has been working in coordination with the FBI and other law enforcement agencies as they delivered that message last night. And again, the way that it was transmitted on Instagram, I've noted before, I don't think that's a coincidence. Instagram is a platform which has a very broad audience, right? If it was just NBC, or if it's just Fox, or if it's just a certain network, it limits it. But Instagram, many millions and millions of people use that platform. So the person that may be abducting this individual, Nancy Guthrie, hopefully is getting the word. They are getting the message that the family wants to talk to you. They want to cooperate. They want to start opening the lines of communication. But again, the FBI is going to be looking at, is this a hoax? Is this a false flag? Is it real? And so those are the three options. Now, they've communicated back to the public, and let's see how long it takes to get a response, if they get a response.
Yeah, we obviously are about to get more details here, hopefully a lot more when this news conference begins shortly. Darren, this was an interesting moment on the Today Show coverage of this morning. Jim Kavanaugh is a retired Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosive Special Agent. He was on Today Show earlier, and he provided, based on his experience with this in circumstances like this analysis. Listen.
They went to a lot of effort to break in, to assault Nancy, to take her away, to hide her out. They went to a whole lot of effort. And now they have to close their circle for their goal, and that is they have to communicate. So the best thing they can do, their best options, the abductors, is to release Nancy, leave her at the foot of a church somewhere, a store, or take the step to communicate to see if you can reach your goal.
I mean, I don't know how to say this, Darren, but it almost leaves you hopeful that if this is an abduction where she is being, held hostage or for ransom, that if those are a couple different scenarios, maybe we'll learn more about that here shortly. But that was the analysis this morning on Today. Your reaction to it?
I mean, that's one component that you can look through the lens of, but I think what law enforcement needs to do, which I think they probably did, was connect with the credit bureaus to find out what the usage of her credit card would have been. Why this is important is because this can be quite telling as to what individuals visited that residence. Was it DoorDash? Was it Uber Eats? Did you have landscapers? Did you have a service employee, etc.? That can be quite telling as to the identities of people that actually visited that residence that didn't have a long-term, quote, relationship with her. And after you drill down on those individuals, you also want to look into the neighborhood as it relates to other service-related employees that may have temporarily been at the location. This is going to widen the net for people that law enforcement can engage for information to determine who in fact did visit that residence. We look at a time of roughly in the 2 a.m. hour is when I believe the abduction took place, because that's when we saw the disconnect with the Apple Watch. Mm-hmm. So this is clearly someone that had a genuine understanding as to her being a person that was in residence, and it would have been the most effective time to go in and commit to an abduction because you had a limited number of people that would have been on the road. In addition to that, we also want to spotlight the license plate reader cameras that are in somewhat of a close proximity to the location. Now, when we look at the location on television, we see a series of dirt roads, but at some point it has to intersect with a traffic light. So those traffic cams could be very instrumental in capturing a license plate as it relates to an individual that came from this area.
Wow, those are really
we want to
thoughts.
widen the net as possible.
And Nicole, if I could, we're told we're probably within about 5 minutes of the news conference beginning. I want to come back to the ransom note and the message that was sent from the family. Here is part of that, Savannah Guthrie, related to the ransom note. Listen here.
We too have heard the reports about a ransom letter in the media. As a family, we are doing everything that we can. We are ready to talk. We need to know without a doubt that she is alive and that you have her. We want to hear from you, and we are ready to listen. Please reach out to us.
Savannah Guthrie is a journalist. She's a writer. She's a communicator. She clearly could have written that herself. But you believe, Nicole, that that was probably done with consultation with the hostage rescue team or the FBI profilers?
I believe it was the behavioral analysis unit, and they, again, specialize in this. The FBI profilers, they fall under what we call BAU, and that's very, very common. I have no doubt Savannah Guthrie is very talented, and I'm sure that she had a lot of say in this and that she had a very strong influence on what was written. And I'm guessing that the family coordinated with law enforcement. That's something that you commonly do, but many times, they work together and then they come up with a statement. And I think that's certainly what they did in this situation. And it's very, very key right now that let's see what happens, because sometimes these take time. And if this is a legitimate ransom, someone out there should be responding. If it is a hoax, obviously we will never hear anything. Or, if it's a false person trying to get money, law enforcement will be able to sniff that out in no time. But let's see what happens. But the issue here is that this is an elderly woman. She needs her medication. Time is of the essence. And so obviously law enforcement, they are working tirelessly behind the scenes, but time is important, and they need to have a proof of life. With AI and all of the things that you could copy her voice, that will not be enough. You will not fool law enforcement. We need to bring her back to safety soon.
Yeah, there's been so many different ways to look at this and so much different analysis, including Ed Smart, the father of Elizabeth Smart, who offered why over the past few days there was speculation surrounding why we weren't seeing the family members. But of course, they too, early on, very early on, have to be, Darren, part of the investigation. He said this earlier. Listen.
Clearing the family is crucial. They're generally the first place that law enforcement look. So, cooperating with law enforcement to bring that to a close as quickly as possible so that they can move on to other potential parts of the investigation were really important. In our case, it went on for days trying to clear the family.
Yeah, I mean, you think about they were, grieving the loss of their mother in that moment, terrified for her whereabouts, Darren, but at the same time having to answer questions to clear themselves from the investigation.
Right. Law enforcement and the victim's family should be working in tandem. One of the first things that the victim's family would do in a situation such as a kidnapping is they would actually visit the residence, and they would be able to assess if there was property taken, such as valuables and things to that effect. That can be something that law enforcement can use moving forward in terms of, was this possibly sold at a pawn shop? In addition to that, the family would have a better understanding of the possible whereabouts, any conflict that the victim may have gone through with someone else, because this would have been something that the family would have communicated, and this can be amplified to law enforcement. The person in law enforcement that would be assisting or dealing with the family, we refer to them as a coach. That coach is someone that gains a level of communication with that family, and that family tends to become more understanding and more willing to communicate with that same person. So you need to keep that same person the whole way through, because that's where the level of confidence has been established. I think the family can provide information, or they've already provided information that we as the public watching on television have not seen, and I believe that the sheriff is keeping a lot of this close to the breast, because there were cameras in that house. And just think, the average person that has a family member that's 80 plus years of age that has a physical disability will have those cameras in the house. Initially, when the reports came out, this wasn't mentioned, but now this is being mentioned. So a lot of my question is, was the content held in a cloud, or was it held in a localized unit in the house? I'm hopeful that law enforcement has captured that information and they're using that to their advantage to possibly find who the perpetrator is moving forward.
Nicole, back to the technical part of the investigation. We have an image that we want to put up on the screen. This is of a law enforcement officer. We don't know if it's FBI or if it's local, carrying a Cellbrite case. What is in that case, and what is it used for?
All right, that's a very, very important question.
Oh, hold on that. I'm sorry, because the Sheriff Nanos is up at the lectern now. We're going to just listen in. We'll get back to you on that point in just a second.
Let's bring in our panel, Nicole Parker and Darren Porcher, to react to what you just heard. Darren, your takeaway.
I didn't think that I got a lot of information that was really substantive to this, and it just goes back to, from a law enforcement perspective, what you want to do is you want to harvest your assets. When I say harvest your assets, meaning local law enforcement has individuals in the community that can provide information. When we look from the hours from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m., you have a very different dynamic of population that's on the street. A lot more stands out to these individuals that would be on the street during those hours between 1 and 5 a.m. And oftentimes, these people can provide you that substantive information. Local police have a lot of assets in these communities that they can engage. And when I go back into my time working the streets, one of the things that I would do is I would always go back to the scene of the crime on the same time and date, or on the same time and day of the week where it happened. So that would be, of course, a Saturday going into Sunday. We don't have that luxury because we want to try to capture as much information as quickly as possible. But law enforcement, I'm sure, is working the streets between that hour of 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. to find out who was possibly out there.
Let me ask you, Nicole, to come back where we were just before we went to the briefing, and that was this picture of a Cellbrite case being brought into the home. What is that? What does it do? What information can be gleaned from that?
All right, so first of all, in reference to the press conference, I actually thought there was a lot of information in that press conference. And I think the most important thing that I heard is that no one has been eliminated. And there were specific questions about certain family members, and the response was, no one has been eliminated, the family has been highly cooperative, and we would like to continue to have that cooperation. And so, social media can be very harsh, and we don't want that. We want cooperation. What may appear as a suspect may be a victim. That is very, very powerful and important to look at. But going back to the Celebrate, it's very important to remember that yesterday there was a lot of flurry and activity at both Nancy Guthrie's home and Annie Guthrie's home. Again, Annie Guthrie is the daughter that lives there in Arizona, and the Celebrate is an Israeli technology that's used for digital forensics. And that is important because there were devices that would have been extracted, shall we say, and there's different levels of extraction. 95% of the devices that are extracted with a Celebrate device is typically a mobile phone or some sort of tablet or that sort of device.
Nicole, before we move on here, when I went back to look at the pictures, that lead FBI agent who was speaking at the news conference appears to be the same person who was photographed leaving the sister's home with that case. Does that tell you anything?
I wasn't able to get a good close look at the picture. If that was the case, that would tell you something. But again, going back to the Celebrate, there are different levels of extraction. And so when it's someone going out there, there's different ways to do these extractions from devices. There's the physical extraction, which is the highest level. You're going to get all of the data from the device. You're going to get anything that was deleted, any carve-outs, things of that sort. The next level under that is the file system extraction. And then underneath is the logical extraction. And logical extraction is what the user actually sees. The file system extraction is going to be things that were deleted. So depending what level of extraction that was, the indication to me is that there was someone from law enforcement at Annie Guthrie's home that walked out with that Celebrate case that indicates that they were imaging devices inside that home. I did not see them leave with any sort of device to take back to the lab, let's say, the CART lab we would call it at the FBI, but we did see that they walked out. That means that they were likely imaging devices that would not, or extracting devices. That's not uncommon. Okay. These are family members, people that were communicating with her. That would be very common to see. That's normal.
All right, Nicole, thank you very much.
Harris Faulkner knows that city and visits often. Her husband was born and raised there. She's, of course, the anchor of the Faulkner Focus and co-host of Outnumbered. She joins me now. Harris, it's great to have you on there. Kind of picking up where Paul left off there. I mean, clearly that note last night, we can talk about Tucson in a second, but I just wanted to get your take on this, that the note, the ransom note that was sent, they were responding. The FBI has kind of acknowledged they were helping the family. They brought in the tripod. They were helping, Savannah Guthrie and her brother and sister respond to that. It's clearly, important that they were responding, trying to get more dialogue from whoever sent this note.
Look, they were already, and we didn't know this at the time, they were already less than 24 hours out to a deadline of 5 p.m. local time there in Tucson, Arizona. So they were, all stops are pulled out. At that point, they're going to do whatever they can. And law enforcement has been telling me, as journalists, we have sources all across the country just to get their perspectives. Some we've had on the show on the Faulkner Focus. This is a situation now that has a double deadline, and that's truly what stood out to me as we watched the special agent Heath Yankee take a folded piece of paper, likely a printout of that ransom note, and then start to read the deadlines. 5 p.m. is coming in less than 4 hours from now, local time, Arizona there. They don't do daylight saving. And the next deadline, what is that about? Like, what happens today at 5 p.m. local? Is that a danger to Nancy? She's already in danger. So what's the next level with that? There was something that Paul mentioned with Nest. They're owned by Google. We reached out from the show to just get our own statement from them, and they mirrored a little bit of what they've been saying. But to answer Paul, yeah, they definitely are helping. Quote, we are assisting law enforcement with their investigators, end quote. That's from a Google spokesperson we spoke with. And also, this is an ongoing investigation, and we cannot share further details at this time. So they are doing something. They are involved in this, but we won't know all of it. Nest was the camera system, apparently, that there was no active subscription for, because had there been, perhaps there would have been a camera on. Like in most instances, you don't just have your doorbell. What if somebody rips that off? You have another camera who might have caught that. So I'm curious about positioning and what they'll see. But let's talk about that neighborhood for a second. It is gorgeous. The Skyline area is beautiful. This particular area has several shopping malls within a very short driving distance, like less than 9 or 10 minutes from it. There are some areas that would have bars and restaurants. So you're wondering, well, if someone showed up and took her around that 9:30, 9:45, or later in the morning when the pacemaker stopped, communicating with her digital device, the app on her Apple phone, what would have been going on? Well, there are some things that are close by that might have been wrapping up in both those cases. So there was some legitimate activity going on, but for the most part where she is, it is quiet. You can hear your own heartbeat. It is dark up there. I've hiked that area. And it's at,
Yep.
you know, the area is at the base of, as you kind of enter to the east and west, the Saguaro National Forest. Beautiful hiking, lots of cacti up there. She couldn't walk there. The sheriff told us day one, day two, she couldn't go farther than 50 yards. The other thing that really struck me in the news conference, though, was the resetting, if you will, or the regret of releasing that crime scene. Remember a couple of days ago, the sheriff announced, oh, no, you know, the crime scene's clear. That allowed people to trample all over that. And then at the news conference today, at the behest of a reporter who asked, do you regret that? He said, yeah, hindsight being 20/20, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
I'm curious, Harris, and we got to go here, but I'm curious, when you look at the neighborhood, you know the neighborhood. Every time we cover breaking news, whether it's a school shooting, whether it's some kind of bank robbery, so on and so forth, how far is that home from the closest interstate or freeway? Because it's interesting, how many neighborhoods would they have to go through to be able to get to a major roadway where there are not a lot of homes and not a lot of cameras, because that would be in consideration here.
Yeah, I'm looking, that would be to get to I-19, to get to those areas, Ina Road, Oracle, where there's a shopping center, maybe 10 minutes, 10-minute drive. Tucson Mall, also near there. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be that far, but again, you're not talking about, somebody would physically have to carry her. She didn't have her crane.
Right.
So they'd get her in a vehicle and they could maybe get out of there. I-19, so what's interesting about that too is, would they head to the border? Would they go north? Where would they be going? Did they have a thought out plan? We are a lot of days out from this now.
Yeah.
And so
my point exactly. And the reason I say that, Harris, is because, you know, it's interesting how many, when they're looking, they said, look, we're going around neighborhoods and we're looking to see at what time, you know, that early in the morning, how many cars are going by. So, you know, that's you go back to a lot of these crimes that we've done, and there's only a few cars on the road. So how many neighborhoods do you have to go through? How many neighborhoods have, you know, security cameras to be able to kind of identify that? And if you have to go through a lot of neighborhoods before you get to a major road, that ups your odds of them hitting on something at some point in the next several days.
Well, real quickly, if you're looking for anybody who might have seen someone, if they went to an area that's not far away, and that's why I mentioned those bars and restaurants, if they went to that area and people were just leaving or wrapping up or whatever, they would fold in. It would be hard for them to stick out because there'd be people around. If they went to a more deserted area and anyone could see them, they'd be the only ones out. So at this point, this far out, knowing which direction they went in, are they going south, are they, you know, down toward that mall, are they going here, or are they just trying to be in the wilderness? You have to know that area well to get out from where Nancy Guthrie's house is in the dark.
Bingo. Harris Faulkner, great to have your insight on this. Thank you. We appreciate it. Well, as we know, President Trump very much involved in aiding the investigation into Nancy Guthrie's abduction, the president offering assets and promising federal law enforcement at the family's disposal. The senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy, fresh out of the White House briefing with more on this. Peter.
And Trace, they waited to start the White House briefing until President Trump and Caroline Leavitt were done watching the Pima County Sheriff and FBI press conference so that the president could send Caroline Leavitt out with what we should all expect from him in this search for Nancy Guthrie. President Trump posted about Nancy Guthrie that he is directing all federal law enforcement to be at the family's and local law enforcement's complete disposal immediately. What should we expect to see from the federal government in coming days in the search to find Nancy Guthrie?
It's a very good question, Peter, and it's why I was on the phone with the FBI earlier this morning to ask that. And what they told me is that the FBI, again, is at the disposal of the state and local government. Whatever personnel or assets or resources that the state and local authorities and police need will be granted to them at the direction of the president, the FBI director, and the attorney general.
The administration is also dealing with this slight change in policy, pulling 700 ICE officers out of Minneapolis while still trying to be tough in enforcing immigration laws, especially when it comes to rounding up violent illegal aliens. And the administration is responding now to threats being made by agitators to build up to 1,000 roadblocks throughout the Twin Cities.
The message to those folks, what are you doing? You really think you're going to stop an ICE and CBP from doing the job? It's a joke. Only people you're hurting is your own community who wants to go and get groceries, pick up the dry cleaning, or go to work, whatever. You're just hindering them. Stop. Stop.
So the official line from the White House is if people want to peacefully protest against the president's policies, they can go ahead. But if they want to set up roadblocks in the middle of the street, ICE vehicles will probably just drive right through them. Trace.
Peter Doocy live at the White House. Peter, thank you. A breaking update. Fox is live in Arizona as the search for Nancy Guthrie intensifies. Next.
Right now, we believe Nancy is still out there.
Does the ransom note that you're working establish any communication protocols in it?
No, it does not. And that is what I think is important, that if someone has Nancy and is demanding the ransom, that there is communication with the family. We talked about has been no proof of life, and there was no other demands within that letter. So they're still waiting for communication.
Okay, so we just learned the potential ransom note being investigated does not, as he was saying there, does not establish communication protocols. Now, remember last night, the Guthrie family addressed that note pleading for proof of life. Watch this.
We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive and that you have her. We want to hear from you, and we are ready to listen. Please reach out to us.
Let's bring in James Fitzgerald, retired FBI supervisory special agent and criminal profiler. He worked to catch the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, the co-host of Cold Red podcast, and Dr. Casey Jordan, criminologist and host of the Criminal Appeal podcast. Thank you all for coming on. James, to you first. I want to play kind of so we can get a timeline here. We got the FBI, we got Savannah Guthrie talking about this. I want to play a back-to-back soundbite here. We're going to start with the local news anchor that the team that got one of the ransom notes, followed by the FBI kind of talking about that. Watch this.
They're still looking into the legitimacy of it. It came into our newsroom via email. It also included a dollar amount, a deadline, and again, other specifics that only Guthrie's abductor might know. So that definitely raised some red flags.
So the ransom note that was distributed to the media did make a demand for 5 p.m. today. And if a transfer wasn't made, then I think a second demand was for next Monday. We're not going to go beyond that, but that was the ransom note the media received.
Did it indicate what would happen if they didn't meet that ransom? Did they?
We're not going to go into those specifics.
Yeah. I mean, you see there, they're not going to go any further on this, but it is kind of baffling, James, when you talk about this and you think, well, here's the deal. What happens is that they have asked for a deadline of 5 o'clock today, but they did not give the family or police or anybody else any way to be able to make the demand by 5 o'clock today.
And Trace, that could go both ways. It could mean it's a legitimate kidnapping and they want to protect themselves and not give any lines of potential communication, phone, email, whatever type of contact information. Or it could be someone, as I said earlier, this was either done for profit or for revenge, this abduction. Or it could be someone who, did what they had to do with this Guthrie, and they still don't want to talk to anybody about it. I coined a term about 20 years ago. It's an acronym, POMIC. A lot of syllables coming up. Post-offense, manipulation of investigation, communication. I was seeing a lot of crimes being committed, rapes, murders, that people will be suspected, then they put these letters out somewhere in the criminal justice system, the media, to lawyers, to police, whomever. And that is designed, like I said, to throw off, misdirect the investigation. So I would want to look at these notes. The forensic linguist and me would really like to look at them and break them down from an idiolectal perspective. Any dialect features contained therein. But at the same time, they have to work it seriously. But unless there's something in there that only the offenders, the abductors would know, I don't put as much faith in it as possible. But they still have to work it like it is a real kidnapping until proven otherwise.
Yeah, and Dr. Jordan, he makes a good point there, but the whole concept here is the FBI clearly believes there is some validity to this note. Whether they think it might be a hoax or not the real deal here, there is something valuable about this because they are the ones, they acknowledge today, that kind of got the Guthrie family together. They helped them film this response so that they could get some kind of dialogue going again. Fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, what's interesting is that there were the rumblings of the ransom demand in the news before it was confirmed by the police. And we weren't sure whether to, you know, take it as a hoax or whether it was legitimate. And since then, they've obviously validated it enough to put that video appeal out last night with Savannah and her siblings. You know, the rumors were, though, that they listed something in that communication that described the interior of the house and also said what she was last wearing. Now, that in and of itself seemed very flimsy to me. It wasn't specific enough to really confirm that they had her. And yet, maybe over time, the specificity of that made them return to the house, because we saw police activity there yesterday, to confirm some clues or some details that must have been in that communication. Likewise, something that kind of stood out to me, the garage door opened at X time and it closed 2 to 3 minutes later. Garage doors very often close within 10 to 20 seconds. Makes me wonder if they actually entered through the garage as Nancy was going into the house, snuck under the garage door, and they can describe what she was wearing because she never changed into her pajamas or a nightgown. So they might actually know the last thing that she was wearing. I mean, there's a lot that we do not know and we don't need to know, but things are moving
Dr.
forward.
Jordan, let me just jump in here and kind of just to back up your point here. Yeah, you look at the timeline, at 9:48 p.m., family drops Nancy off, home and garage door opens at 9:48. 9:50 p.m., garage door closes. Maybe it takes 2 minutes, James Fitzgerald, but who knows? The other thought I had on this is we were told there was DNA in the bedroom. There was blood found on the front porch. The sheriff said, well, you know what I mean. It was on near the door of the front porch, but not in the house, apparently, not owing away from the house. So is there no trail? Is there no trail coming to the front door? Is there no trail going away from the front door? Or are we just not being told about any blood anywhere else?
Well, there's a lot we're not being told, and no doubt that includes the blood spatter and where it may be and where not be. I talked about this earlier this week on another media hit, but you know, there's a lot of explanations as to why the blood stopped where it did. It could be as simple as gravity and physics, that somehow someone picked up Mrs. Guthrie and started carrying her, and the blood just kind of dripped down on her, and they put her inside of a car, van, whatever it may be. So there's a lot of information they're still going to look at there. At least so far from what they said, there's no other or alien DNA inside the house. What they found so far is only that of Mrs. Guthrie. Let's hope it's not a serious enough injury that in of itself would have killed her right then and there. But obviously, her health is a factor here, and hopefully she's getting the meds that she should be getting.
Dr. Jordan, 15 seconds kind of wraps up here. You have a different thought than James Fitzgerald.
No, I always agree with Jim on everything. The bottom line is that whoever abducted her put a lot of planning into it. The idea that there was a trespasser at a neighbor's house maybe a month ago shows that maybe they planned their escape route very carefully. And the bottom line is we are operating as if Nancy is alive, and we will get her back. And that is what we need to do until we know otherwise.
Dr. Casey Jordan, James Fitzgerald, thank you both for coming on.
Now let's bring in former FBI Special Agent based in Arizona, Jonathan Gillum. Jonathan, you know, I want to get into first that timeline we learned at the press conference. There's that 41 minutes or so, starting at 1:47 when the doorbell camera goes offline. And then, of course, by 2:28, you have her pacemaker at being disconnected or going offline. What do you make of that timeline, and what questions do you have?
Well, 1:47, the camera goes offline. 2:28, the pacemaker goes offline. But at 2:12, somehow there was still movement of a person detected. So that tells me there was more than one camera, which has been reported, but something occurred there that shows me somebody was in there actively disabling cameras, and then was still caught on the movement, was still caught somehow. There may be, even though the camera was broken, there could be some type of a transmission that happens with the Nest camera that I believe this was. And then we see that her pacemaker goes offline. So that's a very quick timeline of what appears to be somebody moving into that area, disabling cameras, and then moving her out of there. And in some time in that, she was injured. So that shows me that it was pretty quick, not super fast, but it was fast enough where when she sustained injuries, that's very alarming to me as an investigator, because when I look at the totality of the circumstances that we're being presented here, it's important to know if they came in the front door, if they came in the back door, which it has to do with the cameras, but access to that location and who might have honed in on Miss Guthrie. Was she in Mexico recently? Does she have any new recent acquaintances? Is there family members that are destitute or have issues with finances? Who in the family is going to gain money from her death? Because this is the bottom line here, Griff. All these things that we're looking at, when it comes to a ransom and kidnapping, this is a very technical crime in this day and age. And the likelihood of somebody getting away with that is very low. But somebody who might try it is going to be somebody who's very desperate or somebody who has a lot of anger towards Miss Guthrie.
Yeah, those are key questions for sure, Jonathan. And I think based on you talking about the details in that timeline and the app and the pacemaker, it's clear that the digital footprint on this may be key in finding out more information. Jonathan Gillen, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much.
We'll have more news in reaction to Trump RX in a moment, but we now have a Fox News alert. Savannah Guthrie's brother, Cameron, just posted a video on Instagram moments ago.
This is Cameron Guthrie. I'm speaking for the Guthrie family. Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly. We need you to reach out, and we need a way to communicate with you so we can move forward. But first, we have to know that you have our mom. We want to talk to you, and we are waiting for contact.
Joining me live from Tucson, Arizona, is Paul Morrow, Fox News contributor, former NYPD inspector. Paul, the brother Cameron didn't speak much in that first video, so it's certainly something to hear him now. They know time is not on their side here, and this takes it up a notch of something so intensely serious and grave already.
Yeah, Laura, and what he's doing very clearly is re-emphasizing the message that was delivered yesterday in that first video, which was, if in fact that ransom note that came in by email that we've all heard about that went to TMZ and some of the local outlets, not the one for which somebody was arrested today. That was just a tag-along of somebody who was trying to make a score. But the one that the FBI is pulling at and the task force is working, that did not include any protocols to communicate with the kidnappers. And so if you're sitting where the family is, you're saying to yourself, even if we want to pay, and I think that's the subtext here, there's no way to set up an exchange so that they know they can get their mother back, which of course is part and parcel of any kidnapping. And you see this in the ransomware world. There's special protocols to set up that you can speak so that the perps don't reveal who they are and where they are. These people have not done that, and I think it undermines the potential genuineness of this ransom note that came in by email.
Yeah, Paul, at first we thought it was perhaps another hoax after they're clearly prosecuting those who seek to try to benefit from this in a sick and twisted manner. They've already, they're already prosecuting one individual. I'm sure there'll be more. But there must be an indication that beyond just the Apple Watch, that there's something here. And the significance, it's something you've addressed, of authorities not revealing how the kidnappers got into that home. I don't think that can be overstated. That is very important.
It is, of course. And, there's an interesting point that came out today in the press conference. The sheriff backed away the idea that there'd been forcible entry. And that's a bit of a 180. And I'm going to tell you why I find that significant, Laura. They initially said that they got DNA and that they sent it off for a very rapid-fire analysis, would take 12, 14 hours to get back. And I asked a question today. Are you using that DNA to do genetic genealogy investigation, as they did in the Koberger case, to try to get a relative or something like that? And I got kind of a shaky answer. My point being, I don't think the DNA has panned out. They didn't get any alien DNA. I think they would have gone to that, just like we were told unequivocally that there's no video. And, I hate to be a damper, but let's remember something. Very casually, they let slip today. That is, the sheriff said, one of the things we're going to be doing is blanketing the area with billboards. If you thought you were going to get video, if you thought you might be working a good piece of DNA, if you thought you had a good digital lead or video lead from cameras relative to a car or something, would you be going to billboards? So I found that somewhat dampening, but I don't want to be a killjoy. I want to say I do think that they will solve this, but of course it's a matter of time here because of her illness and her age.
Yeah, there were a number of things that were said at this press conference that, and again, you're the expert here, but that sounded curious to the layman, the laywoman. And one of them was when the sheriff conceded that he didn't get to the scene until late in the afternoon, or almost 7 p.m., I guess. But he didn't realize, if it may be relevant, right, to who the suspect is, he didn't realize that it was Savannah Guthrie's mother until late in the afternoon. And he's receiving, it's easy to be an armchair critic and so forth. He's receiving a lot of criticism, or the Pima County Sheriff's Office is. I would like to know your reaction to the timeline of the authorities and the securing of the scene, et cetera.
So it may have come over to him like just an elderly missing. And so if there were people there, that is his people there working the situation, and they didn't realize the significance of who she was, they might have been thinking, well, you know what, it's an elderly person. Maybe she wandered off. We're going to canvass for her. Maybe we got a missing person. It wasn't until they figured out a couple of things. Maybe you see the blood droplets on the front of the house. They put the connection together to Savannah, that they really started to ramp up and realize, hey, we very well may have something worse. And then, of course, the Ring camera from the front of the house is ripped off, and various other things that we've heard about, maybe something broken inside the house, maybe began to coalesce for them later in the day when they realized, hey, this is not a garden variety missing. But I think the underlying point is it's very hard to consider that this would be non-targeted. The chances, it's not like the house screams wealth. It's a nice house. It has a pool and all of that, but it's not, the chances of it happening like just, okay, we're going to do a random burglary and it turns out to be Savannah Guthrie's mother, that's pretty remote. And so you have to think targeted, somebody who knew the target, somebody who knew the area, someone who had done some recon. And that argues to me something more localized than some of the theories we're hearing.
Yeah, I mean, again, the fact that the FBI is big presence in Tucson. I mean, there are a lot of missing people across the United States every week, and there's a huge FBI presence. And knowing President Trump, and he's doing this big RX event tonight at the White House, but knowing President Trump, I could imagine him watching the press conference, the first press conference, and getting really frustrated. Because I think that the information provided was unclear, whether it was targeted, not targeted, entry, forcible, not. And it's being described tonight in a place like the Daily Mail as bumbling. And he really likes Savannah Guthrie. And I just think he was like, this is ridiculous. We've got to get professionals in there. I mean, that's how I'm reading this. Maybe it's wrong, but it seems to me that at the outset, this could have been handled a lot better and perhaps with a quicker result.
Well, one thing I would say is that certainly the messaging could have been better. It's hard to see behind the scenes. I would just say this, Laura. We had the same kind of reaction, or many people did, relative to the Koberger case, relative to the Tyler Robinson case, relative to the Luigi Mangione case. Two of those pieces are still innocent until proven guilty. But we all want the instant gratification. Sometimes the messaging isn't great in these situations. Maybe it's law enforcement that's not used to dealing with such a big case, although they've had big cases here. But I get the impression they got their legs under them now, and they're really searching hard for something they can pursue. This is where the FBI is going to, I think, be so crucial, because it's going to be digital stuff. Did something hit her Wi-Fi? They're going to be looking going backwards, not just the night of. You got to see, was somebody in there shouldn't have been? Was somebody in there a lot? Was somebody stalking Savannah? There's a lot of digital work, and what you can do now, the Bureau can do now, is they have AI capacity, and you can cut down by weeks the amount of work you would have to do, the real footwork. And so I'm still very hopeful, as I said in these other cases I've name-checked. They're going to get there, but it's a matter of time because you have this elderly woman.
Yeah, and again, time is not necessarily on our side here, as we hope for the best. And the sheriff said, we are acting as if she is very much alive. Paul, you've been on this from the first moments. Thank you very much. And if you're just joining us, moments ago, Savannah Guthrie's brother released a new video about the abduction of his mother.
This is Cameron Guthrie. I'm speaking for the Guthrie family. Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly. We need you to reach out, and we need a way to communicate with you so we can move forward. But first, we have to know that you have our mom. We want to talk to you, and we are waiting for contact.
Tom Baker is a former FBI special agent. Tom, does this look like a very professional job to you?
Oh, it's a little bit different than the traditional kidnapping for ransom. And if I may add my comment, I do hope that it is a kidnapping for ransom, because then we definitely have the chance of getting the victim back.
What would the other motive be if it's not money? Because it has created a nationwide spectacle. Would that be a part of this?
Well, once you get into the mind of the kidnapper, and they're undoubtedly in the behavioral science unit right now, there's a whole team of people trying to figure out the mind of the kidnapper. But in terms of traditional kidnapping for ransom, which more and more it looks like this might be, that's a specialty of the FBI. That's something we're trained on from the beginning. It doesn't happen very often, but it's something the FBI handles and handles very well. And the history of kidnapping for ransoms is that they're almost all solved. And with a few sad exceptions, the victims almost all recovered alive. So that's what we have to hope it is. And there's a template that the Bureau has for working these cases. And I was not surprised to hear that a team went back in after the sheriff's team gave up on the search of the house to go back and search the house more thoroughly. Lots of things can be missed, and the evidence response team is very good at finding things. If you remember in Boulder, Colorado, the John Benet Ramsey case, they didn't find the victim for quite some time, and the victim's body was in the house. So things can be overlooked.
We always hear about the last person to see the victim, obviously, is going to be scrutinized. In this case, we believe it was the son-in-law. And then the sheriff famously said he hasn't ruled anybody out. Why hasn't he ruled out the last person to see Nancy?
I can't get into his mind, and some of those details actually do strike me as odd. But the timeline you so well explained at the beginning of your show, that timeline and the fact of the blood there, whether or not there's evidence of a forceful entry, I don't think that really matters. It's clear that there was an abduction took place. Mm-hmm. I think you can conclude that from the physical evidence and the timeline. Now we have to hope, and I really do mean this, hope that it was a kidnapping for ransom, because a kidnapping for ransom can be negotiated and the victim can be recovered.
Yeah, and I don't want to suggest anything nefarious is going on with the son-in-law. It's just very odd, some of the messages we're hearing from the sheriff, who is a elected official, and so he is a politician. Sometimes it's kind of hard to navigate with these press conferences. Thank you so much for your expertise and sharing that with us on Jesse Waters Primetime.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.